Carpe diem. Now, who knows what that means?
I think we can all agree that there's a few special films out there that when you watch them, they can reframe the way you think about the world, even if it's for just a brief moment. When I think of a timeless film, one of the first things that pops into my head is The Dead Poets Society. Before we jump in, if you like candid deep dives into films and animation, hit subscribe. It helps me a lot and you can keep up with my future videos. I'm gonna break this video down into 5 short parts, which I found defined this film. So, the year is 1959. A group of boys at a strict New England prep school shuffle into class, preparing for another year of discipline, tradition, and rules. Ugh, those pesky rules. And then their new English teacher walks in. Or technically walks out. He doesn't stand at the chalkboard, he doesn't open a textbook. Instead, he asks them to follow him to a picture of the school's alumni and tells the boys one thing. Carpe diem. Seize the day. And in that moment when I watched it, I knew this wasn't going to be some ordinary school film. Apart from me finding it really inspiring, it also poses the question. What happens when young people raised to follow rules are suddenly told to think for themselves? What could possibly go wrong? And I don't mean when a substitute teacher is in for the day. Although I'm sure we've all had those days and basically no one listened to them.
Today we're going to be talking about William Shakespeare. I know. A lot of you look forward to this about as much as you look forward to root canal work.
The Dead Poets Society really made me think about being passionate for things that sprout specifically from passion itself. Not for monetary value or materialism, it's just for the sake of loving it. It's not just about a group of boys wandering around an elite boarding school, it's about conformity and rebellion, and the seemingly unreachable idea of living life to the fullest. I think it's something every generation is going to go through in their own way. The fact that the words from a single teacher can change the course of someone's life forever was a really compelling thing to me because I've gone through a similar experience. And somehow decades later, this film still resonates. So why is that?
The dead poets were dedicated to sucking the marrow out of life.
Dead Poets Society was directed by a guy called Peter Weir, and it was written by Tom Shulman, and it hit theatres in 1989, which was a pretty good year for films. It's set at the fictional Welton Academy, a boys' prep school in Vermont, and it's a story about tradition versus individuality, conformity against passion. It's very artsy stuff. So the writer, Tom Shulman, he struggled a lot with the pressure to follow a rigid path, and a lot of people feel this way, especially those who come from families with set expectations. For example, your family might want you to study math or sciences, but in reality you want to become a musician. I felt that Shulman's school experiences really showed in this film because it's not a story that felt manufactured. It actually feels lived in, it feels real, from the environment to the dialogue and everything, the whole atmosphere.
Agricola.
So I found this film took a lot of inspiration from different philosophers and of course poets who embed their works into this film, and it's kind of up to us to either accept it or judge it, reject it. The philosophies of people like Walt Whitman get touched on a little bit, and it's basically the idea that life should be experienced in the moment, actively thinking in the present time. I was a huge fan of this premise, and I think having a rigid system and then having characters try to break it can always be entertaining. And the ways the students go about breaking this system can vary from being really light-hearted to getting quite dark. So I guess it does touch upon the kind of dark climate we're in now, the very elitist climate, the book talk specials. So John Keating isn't your conventional teacher. Shock, you find that out pretty quick.
Keep ripping, gentlemen! This is a battle!
And yes, he's played by the legendary Robin Williams, and it's always quite emotional seeing him in films, especially since his characters always seem to have something to teach the audience in a really raw way. So John kind of serves as this revelation to the students. He acts as this catalyst for everything to come. He is the spark that ignites curiosity and courage in a room of boys who are otherwise trained to obey. And these guys have successful parents, realistically. For them to be fine in life, they just have to do what they're told, there's not a whole lot of risk. Like, if your dad owns $1 million company, which you might inherit one day, you probably think the stakes are quite low in this film, but that's actually what makes the stakes. Because the expectations are set, but is that actually what our characters want?
I hereby reconvene the Dead Poets Society.
So what Keating does is he teaches them to read between the lines of poetry, to see the world differently, and above all, to value their own voice. His intention really is to lay the groundwork for original thought and to make them consider looking at things in a different perspective. Keating encourages the students to savor words and language, and he insists that words and ideas can change the world. So he believes that studying literature is one of the most important things for these students to do. And what I really love about John is that he says we do things for art. We do things for the love, for the passion of it. You know, that's what we work for. He prefaces it in a way that we do everything else, our work, our jobs, as a means to an end, and the end would be self-fulfillment in the realm of art or romance or wherever it might be, making music. Like, that's the real important stuff to him. That's what he prioritizes.
Dangers of conformity.
Well, John, the curriculum here is set. It's proven it works.
And even though his style is a bit over the top, you know, a bit unconventional, it's meant to spark excitement in his students. It helps that they're teenagers and not grad students, because otherwise Keating would be a pretty questionable teacher. Like, dude, are you going to help me pass my exams, or are we going to stand on top of desks? But in this scenario, they don't have to study literature in a super analytical way, you know, it's not college level. Instead, it's more about getting emotionally connected and learning to love it first, before deciding later how far they want to go with it. So how does John change each student? The first of the boys I'll mention is Todd Anderson. He's the shy, insecure boy who's overshadowed by a more confident older brother. He's played by Ethan Hawke. At the start, he's really awkward. He's quite withdrawn, hesitant to speak out because of this constant self-comparison to someone who everyone else seems to idolize. But what Keating does is give Tom his own platform to speak. He basically forces him into it, to be honest, but he does it in a really positive way.
You're sitting there in agony. Come on, Todd, step up. Let's put you out of your misery.
And so Todd begins to discover his own voice, both literally and metaphorically. I really like that his transformation is quite subtle until he hits that moment where he's literally screaming in front of his classmates.
Yo! Oh, good God, boy, yell like a man!
There it is.
You see? You're a barbarian in you after all. Now, you don't get away that easy.
It's a real internal problem that a lot of people can relate to, so as the audience, we want to see him flourish, and when he does, it's like, my guy, my guy.
Say the first thing that pops into your head, even if it's total gibberish. Go on.
A sweaty-toothed madman.
Todd represents the internal victory of self-expression. He actually proves that courage doesn't have to be loud to be revolutionary. It just needs to be authentic, even though in that particular moment, he is quite loud. But being loud isn't the important thing. What's important is being able to take this confidence into the future, you know, to go along with life knowing that you can just be yourself and speak out. What a great scene, man. The supporting boys, so Knox, Charlie, Stephen, they each provide a different lens on conformity and rebellion. For Knox, it's about embodying a romantic obsession and a slightly naive daring. He's very naive. I feel like if you did this to most girls, they'd either call you a creep or maybe run away, but you know, he wears her down and turns out she actually quite likes him. So he perseveres and chases someone who he has very little chance being with, and yet it's the action which is meaningful as opposed to just the result, although he gets very lucky because, you know, she actually does quite like him, which is rare. Charlie is the total flip side of Todd because he embraces non-conformity to the point that he's actually doing himself a disservice. And I think he's the prime example of when you embody rebellion too much to the point that you lose balance.
They're gonna come to you and ask to know what the Dead Poets Society is.
Are we just playing around out here?
In terms of rebellion, he's probably the most loyal student of Keating because he's willing to sink his own ship in the name of being genuine to himself. And I guess it raises the question of what you prioritize, you know? Is it doing the thing you don't want to do but probably should, like staying in school, or should you go gun-ho and just play it by emotion if that's the thing you enjoy? Maybe let me know in the comments, but I feel like most people would probably try to stay on the path they're on and not go too far to the point of getting kicked out of the school, but maybe that's just me. I love that the film lets you decide this for yourself. Is it about just following the way and maybe you'll be rich, maybe you'll be successful, but you're gonna be happy?
Rip out the entire page. Rip it out!
Do you think as he grows up, Charlie's going to regret his choices, or is he glad he made them? You know, we just don't know. And then we have Stephen, who's another example of being timid and afraid of consequences, but his situation is a bit different from Todd because he's practically guaranteed success in his life. Off the bat, we just know he's a genius, but with the camaraderie and a sense of rebellion, he starts experimenting with the idea of freedom. Doing stuff as simple as building a radio is a step towards flourishing for him, and I guess to think outside of the box of academics. Because in a lot of ways, if you are a theoretical scientist or whatever, you know, being able to think outside the box might actually help you more than it would be a detriment. You can think of crazier stuff, and I guess this act of Stephen building just a radio is kind of the foundation of what he could do in the future. And then we have Neil. So Neil Perry is arguably the heart of the story. He's charismatic, passionate, he's brilliant, okay? So he's the one who takes Keating's lessons to their fullest extent. But Neil's journey is heartbreaking. He dreams of acting or following his own desires, but his father is the embodiment of rigid authority. So Neil's conflict isn't just about personal rebellion, he has to fight against societal expectations, and his family genuinely don't want him to do what he wants to do, which in turn would make him happy.
I can't. I have the main part. The performance is tomorrow night.
I don't care if the world comes to an end tomorrow night. You are through with that play.
So when Neil steps onto the stage to perform despite his parents thinking he shouldn't, we, as the audience, feel proud of him. But his arc also reminds us that seizing the day has real consequences, and that courage often can come with a cost. When we're spending time with these characters, we actually feel like part of the group, okay? You know, breaking away from the rigid expectations and doing our own thing. The Dead Poets Society itself is more than just a club, you know, it's a safe space of curiosity and experimentation. And one of the subtle powers of the Dead Poets Society isn't just in the characters, but also the cinematography, which represents far more than you could imagine. The visuals of this film doesn't just capture the school, it comments on the school. What speaks 1,000 words in this film is everything you see, the framing, the composition. You see it in the classroom scenes and the assembly scenes. All the students appear in rows, their heads are down, and they are all uniformly rigid. And we get a lot of these perfect lines and repetitions in the visuals. It's not just a school, it's a system designed to contain, to shape, and to standardize. There's an old Japanese saying about the nail that sticks up must be hammered down, and that's what I think about when I watch this film. And maybe Pink Floyd. But then you get the scenes in the woods where you actually feel like you're being a rebel with these characters. You get these wide open shots which allow the characters to breathe and stretch their bodies and voices, and it breaks this invisible boundary of authority you get when you have any interior scene of the school. You just feel claustrophobic.
For God's sake, stop chattering and sit down.
Nature becomes a massive visual metaphor for freedom in the film, while the school is more of a cage. Lighting plays a huge part as well. You get these long stretching shadows of the desks and whatever. It just makes the place feel really oppressive. And then you get the warmth of the sunlight in the outdoor scenes, and it mirrors creative awakening and the possibility of rebellion. The cinematography of this film isn't just aesthetic, you know, it tells the story, and every shot reinforces the theme of institutionalization versus individuality. It makes the audience feel the tension of the story without a single word being spoken. What makes the Dead Poets Society endlessly fascinating isn't just the story or even Robin Williams' iconic performance, although he is amazing. It's the little moments of inspiration and tension. So when I was studying philosophy in college, or to my US audience that would be high school, I had a teacher, and I'm not going to say his real name, but I'm just going to call him John. Big up John. I want to believe that everyone has the privilege of meeting a John in their life, but sadly that's not always the case. But John was the best teacher I've ever had in my life, hands down, and I remember him coming into our lectures with his huge hydro flask of coffee just ready to start the day. He was a lovely person. He wasn't afraid of being honest and sensitive with us, and he's the only one who really taught me to think beyond the surface level of academia. Not in the way of rejecting it or anything, but just giving us the opportunity to question things. To be comfortable with disagreeing with things, and understanding the why behind things. And I found out that my thing, you know, my passion in college was filmmaking, it was storytelling, and Keating in Dead Poets Society really reminded me of John in college.
Sport is actually a chance for us to have other human beings push us to excel.
And John really supported that, but not in a generic way where a teacher's like, okay, follow your passion, do what you want to do, go to university. He more broke it down for me and, you know, told me, is this a good idea? He actually made me question my own passion, you know, really think about, is this actually worthwhile doing, or could I go a different route? And it ended up being a really good thing to do because he wasn't shy and he wasn't scared of telling, you know, me, that his student, that you have to question yourself. You have to think about things from every angle because what you do now is going to shape your future. So in a way it was terrifying, but it was also really authentic, and that's something I think everyone needs. Because like John, the film asks you to think a different way and to consider everything and not to be afraid of being a bit of a bohemian, even in the most minute ways. So it really makes you ask yourself, are you a Neil, you know, burning brightly but very constrained? Are you Todd, who's finding your voice slowly? Or are you maybe Keating himself, who is daring to show the world a different way of seeing? I think this film is a must-watch for literally anyone. For some characters, what happens is liberating, and for other characters, it's catastrophic, and that's just how life goes. I think that's why the film still resonates today. It's why it matters, because we're living in an age where there's a lot of pampering about, a lot of lies, and really, we want truth and authenticity. The film isn't just about poetry, it's about the willingness to see the world from a different perspective, despite whatever the cost might be. The characters give themselves a choice to do what they think is right. Thank you so much for watching this video, feel free to subscribe and check out my other stuff. Take care.